If you were able to walk into a room, confident that you would be well received, seen, heard, and appreciated by others, and all it took was a few changes in how you navigate your everyday relationships, would you be willing to make those changes? It is possible to be both fully authentic and to experience the best relationships of your life. Now, here is the host of Navigating Complicated Relationships with behavior expert Michaela Gaffen Stone.
Welcome to this episode, everyone. I'm so glad you're here today. I'm your host, Michaela Gaffen Stone, and today we're talking about what you need to know about healthy eating. So there's a whole lot of information available all around you about healthy eating. In fact, if you're on social media at all, and I'm guessing you are, then the chances are very high that you see the advertisements for all kinds of plans, systems, everything claims to have the answer, the last diet you'll ever need, right? There's so many out there and they all claim the same thing. This is the diet that's going to do it all for you. And several times during your morning coffee and scroll session, you're going to come across these kinds of posts, right? Where they're saying, yep, we've got you, come and sign up here and do this thing and we'll tell you everything. You don't need to learn or stretch yourself too much is the implication. So when you're looking at all these shiny posts, how do you know which ones to believe? Are any of them true? Do any of them actually have facts? Well, these are really important questions to ask and to consider and maybe to research a little bit. I know I'm always talking about research and generally I do it so that you don't have to, but sometimes you need to look into what does this mean? If I go for this plan, what will I end up with? What happens next? Do I have to eat like that forever? I mean, there's lots of questions that you should have before you jump into some kind of diet plan or new idea for the superfoods and all that kind of thing. So you might be asking by now, okay, you do complicated relationships. Well, I do. And food is a very complicated relationship, more so because the food industry messes with food products and turns them into things that sit on a shelf for, months or even years. Now, I got to tell you, those food items, those products are a problem because your body does not know what to do with those things. It doesn't recognize it as food because guess what? It isn't. And the more you see the word natural put everywhere, the less likely it is to be even a little bit natural. So some of those things I mentioned in a previous episode, so you can by all means go back and listen to that too. But I do want to tell you why I care about nutrition and why I'm even sitting here talking about it today. You might be questioning, are you qualified in something? Do you know this? Well, it's a good question to ask. And frankly, you should ask every coach that question. What's your experience? What's your knowledge base? Are you certified? Excellent questions. So yes, I'm certified. You can bet I am. I'm a Precision Nutrition Level 2 Master Coach. I have American Council on Exercise Health and Wellness Coach, American Council on Exercise Medical Exercise Specialist. I have those certifications. And as you already know, I'm a board certified behavior analyst, which means I can and do bring nutrition knowledge to behavior change, put them together, and now you have a system that is going to get you from where you are to a place of understanding what different foods do for you. So the thing with the diet plans, the problem with those, well, there's many problems, but one of the main ones is that a diet plan is a sort of one size fits all thing, right? But that doesn't take into account how hungry you get. It doesn't take into account what your health is like right now, your age. It doesn't take into account your activity levels. So you have this one size fits all meal plan. Who does it fit? Probably no one, right? It's like in other episodes, I've talked about parenting and the parenting books that you can buy. Typically speaking, your child won't be in that book because it's for a kid in the middle of the bell curve that doesn't actually exist. It's the same with diet plans. It's for the person in the middle there, and probably male, by the way, because that's usually what things are based on, is the men. And it doesn't take anything else into consideration. So you need something that is going to be very, very individualized. So you learn which foods work for you and which foods don't, which foods are functional, which foods are non-functional. Now, I don't like to say, well, that's a bad food and that's terrible, never eat it, because the main reason for that is if I tell you, oh, let's pick chocolate. Okay, that's always a good one. If I said to you, chocolate's terrible for you, you shouldn't eat it. Don't have that. You can never have chocolate again. You know what you're going to do? You are probably going to hop into your car, go to the nearest candy store, and buy yourself a whacking great block of chocolate because somebody just told you you couldn't have it. And that's going to trigger a deprivation mechanism in your mind where you feel, I can't have this, I'm not allowed. And the sort of panic almost sets in. This is very natural for people. And most human beings have some kind of baggage from their childhood where they weren't allowed to have something they really wanted, or they couldn't do the thing they really wanted. And that translates really well into foods. So if you have a food that you view as a treat, a food that you think you can't live without, then I can tell you that, first of all, I would never say that that's a bad food, because that's going to hook you right into it. You are going to have more and more of that food. But the other thing is, there's a story there. When you have that kind of attachment to a food, there's a reason for it. And it's usually emotional. Emotional eating is a big part of this. Some people are aware they have emotional eating, others aren't. And it's so interesting when they start to learn about it. So that's where the behavior analysis comes in. And it's such an amazing tool to use behavior change and nutrition together to get someone in a place where they are learning so many things that enable them to be successful in whatever it is they're trying to achieve. They improve their health, releasing weight. And I say releasing because if you lose weight, you're probably going to find it again, and you might not want to do that. So you release weight more as a side effect than a focus. Because again, if you're focusing on losing weight and, oh yeah, I'm going to hop on the scale again today and again today and again today, your stress levels will be bouncing like a tennis ball. Because on a good day, you're going to be like, yes, I'm so elated. And on a day where maybe you're a little bit bloated or something and the scales either didn't move or the number went up, then you're going to be all miserable and depressed. And it's all about a number. It's the wrong thing to focus on. The thing you want to focus on is, how do you feel? What's your health like? What are your energy levels like? Could they be better? If they could be better, then I have a program for you. We're in week 8 now of a 13-week program. And the clients that I'm taking through that program are having some amazing breakthroughs and some very real discoveries about food. One client went to the movie theater last week and sat next to his friends who all got, the hot dogs that are wrapped up and popcorn, and candies and all kinds of stuff from the entranceway as they came into the movies. And they sat there eating those. He didn't want any because he's on this program with me. And he said what was really interesting and a big surprise was, as they started to open stuff up and eat it, what he could smell was chemical. It smelled like chemicals to him. And he'd never, ever had that experience before. And I mean, that's so impressive, because he's looking at his friends and saying, wow, no, thanks. I don't want any of that. I can smell the chemicals. And that's what eating the food that works for you does. It enhances your taste buds. It enhances your sense of smell. And you really appreciate what the food is that you're getting. So when it's chemical, when it's sugar laden, all those things, you're going to know that very, very quickly. And you will be astonished at how much sugar is in things where you really wouldn't expect it to be. It's amazing. I mean, some hot sauces, for example, same client said he was about to use the sriracha sauce. and just checked the label first and discovered there were 8 grams of sugar in there. Well, that's a couple of teaspoons of sugar in a hot sauce. So, you're getting sugar in a lot more places than you realize. And you're getting caffeine in more places than you realize. And you are getting carcinogenic, cancer-causing chemicals in a great many places. And you have no idea they're there because they're very well hidden. It's very cleverly done. That's what the food manufacturers and the marketing people are in business for. Notice I say food manufacturers. Think about that. Do you manufacture food or does it grow? Wow. Ideally, it would grow. So the reason I care so much about this is because I have my own health challenges, some of which are just lifelong things, and I manage them. And some can improve, and they are improving as I follow this healthy eating system that I've been talking about. And it takes a lot of learning. It takes a lot of research. Again, I do this so you don't have to, but there's a lot of research involved in figuring out what has happened to what foods and which ones are still good. Because genetic modification, for example, the GMO foods, that denatures the food in such a way that your body has no idea what you just ate. Corn, for example, it's a very sturdy little plant. It's not the big tall thing that would wave all over the place and get smashed down when it rained. It's been bred differently and genetically altered so that it's a stocky plant that has a natural insect repellent. So an insect will bite on the corn and it dies. It's a pesticide. So think about that. It also has herbicide that's naturally in it now. It's bred that way. It's not natural, but it's bred that way so that the crops will be more prolific. They're going to lose far less, if any, and they have like lots and lots of corn to feed people, to make high fructose corn syrup out of, to feed cattle, to do all kinds of things with. And most of that is not really what corn's for. Cattle don't naturally eat corn, so that does bad things to their health. Genetically modified stuff does bad things to your health, because when your body consumes that, 5% of the genes in that corn don't belong there. They're artificial, they're alien. And so the body says, well, I don't know what this is. I don't know where to put it. Best case scenario is it stores it. Worst case scenario is you start getting some pretty big allergic reactions to it, and your health kind of starts to sink in a way that you might not be really aware of it. You're just kind of used to feeling meh. And that's what eating that kind of food can do for you. But me telling you that isn't going to make a difference. And I know that. You're going to say, yeah, that's really interesting. And then you'll go have your corn on the cob, right? So this program is going to take you through experimenting with food and discovering for yourself which foods feel good for you, which foods make you feel energetic, and which foods don't. And that is different for every person. That's the thing. What bothers me won't bother you probably. What works well for me may work well for you, but it might not. And I'm not going to make that call. You are. So this is, I think, the only program out there that empowers the individual to make their own choices and to make really healthy choices. By healthy, I mean it's good for you. It works for you. It's not what somebody else labels as healthy. Who knows? Spinach might be great for one person and terrible for another. Kale. How many people like kale? Not many, unless it's in chips, right? So is that going to help you or hinder you? I don't know. You'd have to try. So that's what this program is all about. And I'm going to tell you more about how you can look at the food items and make some decisions for yourself right now, and maybe even do a little test. So don't go anywhere. We're having a quick break and we'll be back on Inspired Choices Network.
What if your relationships could be a source of delight instead of a source of struggle? In a world where human interactions are anything but straightforward, tuning in to Navigating Complicated Relationships with behavior expert Michaela Gaffen Stone will offer you insights, tools, and a whole new level of understanding for you to use right now. Listen for Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone. Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to mickey@gaffenstone.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Michaela Gaffen Stone. I'm your host of Navigating Complicated Relationships. And if you would like to get in touch with me, you can find me on Facebook. Look up my name, Michaela Gaffen Stone, and you'll find me. And you can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, a little less often. And you can always get me by email, which is Mickey, M-I-K-K-I, Gaffen Stone, Mickey@gaffenstone.com. That's my email, and I'm very responsive. I will answer you and answer any questions you have. So before the break, I was saying that you need to really be aware of who is giving you this diet plan, who is the coach, what's their background knowledge, and can they individualize what they're doing? If they can't, that's a massive red flag right away, and I would run in the opposite direction. If it's someone who has personal experience of losing weight and now they're coaching it, that might not be your best solution. Really, think about it. How do you want someone who has done the work to learn all about nutrition and who knows that you need to address the behavior as well, the emotional eating? Otherwise, right after the diet plan, you'll go straight back to what you did before because you didn't learn anything different. You don't know how those foods work on you, what they do. So, your health history is going to be important here. Can that coach take that into account? They need to be able to. Our current eating habits, for example, depend on a number of factors. Like, you will have learned some habits from childhood. You'll have foods from childhood that you are so hooked into because they give you comfort that the only way to deal with that is not for someone like me to come along and say, okay, stop eating cake. That's not going to help you. You need to put that away now and never eat it again. As I said earlier, that's not going to help. You're going to be very, very responsive to going and buying a whole load of that. So that's not going to help you. But also, you don't know really why that food's not going to help you. If you're not aware of it causing you problems, then chances are you'll go for that emotional hook again and you'll eat it again. But if you're aware that, oh, I get these symptoms and they come from that particular food, it's really easy from that place to look at the food and say, you know what, looks amazing, no thank you, because I'm not prepared to pay the price. I don't want to have my health suffer for the sake of eating this thing. It'll take 2 minutes to eat and I'll have 3 days of suffering. It's something that you get to weigh up, right? So emotional associations with food are very, very strong. And replacing that with something that's really functional is a part of behavior analysis. It's important. One client that I have, she's from Europe originally and living in the US now. And she discovered that she likes to eat certain pastries because they remind her of home in Europe. And so whenever she's feeling lonely or she's missing home, she'll reach for these pastries and start shoving them in. But guess what? The thought of eating the pastries gives her some kind of connection with home. But eating the pastries does not. It doesn't do it. how can it? It's a food product, so it can't fix the loneliness, right? And once we figured out that that was a connection for her, an emotional eating situation, then we came up with, well, how about you pick up the phone and phone home? Talk to people at home, and then if you still want the pastries, you can have the pastries. So nobody took them away, right? There's no, you can never eat those pastries. Absolutely, you can. My preference would be that you chose it rather than you reached for it because of some emotional push. Because the emotions typically, in fact, always don't get fixed by eating food. They just don't. Because it's not an emotional thing, it's a food thing. You think it will, and the thinking about the food is the part that's going to help you feel better, but the eating of it doesn't. So that's something that we do, is look at what are your emotional connections. Socioeconomics are a big part of how you're going to be eating. If you don't have a whole heap of money, then you're going to look for what looks like the cheapest option. But sometimes the cheapest option, first of all, it might not be. It may have been packaged in a way that it looks like it's a good deal. But if you really weigh up, how many ounces per dollar, etc., it probably isn't. Then the other thing is you're going to consume this thing and your health goes down, 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 and you end up on medications going up, 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 and you have health problems that build on each other. And it's kind of a downward spiral, really, and a heavy reliance on the healthcare industry. Now, healthcare is pretty much broken or creaking everywhere. Why? Because it's one of the places where people like to cut money, first of all, which kind of blows my mind, but it is. And it's also, the population is much bigger than the healthcare sector was built for. We just don't have enough doctors, nurses, beds, spaces for the people who need them. And as chronic inflammation from poor eating and obesity from poor eating increase, the strain on the healthcare system becomes greater, which means the quality of healthcare you get cannot be that good. It just can't. It's not pointing fingers at anybody. It's just a simple supply demand. There's a little more demand than there is supply, and that never works well. So even if you're in a concrete jungle, and also known as a food desert, and your local food shop is the dollar store, for example, see what choices you can make that have as few chemicals in as possible. So if you look up when you go into that store, you'll see there are some frozen vegetables, for example. That can be something to supplement what you eat. And adding in good nutrition, I'm not asking you to take anything away, but adding in good nutrition in the first place will help your body to deal with everything else that's going on. So that's a really good place to start as well. But food deserts, frankly, it's kind of shocking that they exist, but we all know they do. And that's very difficult. Now, if you can afford to get a subscription box, or you can make a trip to a farm somewhere and load up, again, difficult if your socioeconomic group is not one that has money. That can be very tough to do. But there are possibilities, different ways for you to address that long term, it will be cheaper for you than dealing with the healthcare system and all the medications you need to take. Plus the lessening of the quality of life, right? That is a big problem. So some people will eat based on their either learned diet mentality or ideology. I know some vegans, for example, who are simply vegan because of ideological reasons, others who are vegan because they feel that that's a healthy diet. And, I'm not going to call anybody out that they're incorrect for any of these things. Like I said, the deal is you need to learn what works for you. But I am going to present something to you that I'd like you to consider. If you think of nutritional anthropology, which means basically how we've been eating for most of our existence, millennia of our existence, we would have to eat, until relatively recently, we would have to eat whatever was in season, whatever was available. there's no storage, there's no supermarket to go buy from. Literally you would have to go out and hunt, you'd gather, you'd grow, you'd do things like that. So depending on the season, you would have different food availability. Nowadays, people eat the same way all year round. That is not what your body, your digestive system are set up for. And it becomes overburdened. If you're eating sugary foods every day, your pancreas is pretty much on fire. Like, that's the thing that produces insulin and takes the brunt of things when you have this influx of sugar all the time. So if you're into drinking sodas, for example, or you have to have that protein bar with chocolate on the top after you've done a workout, you're putting sugar in every day. And we're not meant to do that. We're not built to do that. Doesn't mean you can never have sugar. It just means every day, all year, every year is not a healthy thing. So when it comes to strategies for healthy eating, it's a good idea to consider changing what you're eating. Kind of with the seasons, if you like. Eating seasonally is not a bad thing, but have different ways of eating. So you could be vegan for a while if you wanted to. You can also be a carnivore for a while if you want to, and the same person can do both. The body is going to respond well to having these changes. So that's something that, again, in the program, you'll learn what works for you. Some people feel much better on a plant-based diet. Some people feel better on a carnivore diet. It's not exactly that, but it's close to that. You'll know of that, I think. And some people will do well on a pretty balanced one, and it varies tremendously, which is why, again, you can't really have a diet plan. That just doesn't work. What it does, if I gave you a diet plan and said, here you go, I could write you something where you'd lose weight. Sure, I totally could. And as soon as you finished it, you would go back to eating what you ate, and you would end up with that weight back plus more. And you'd think that you'd failed. But actually, the diet that I'd be giving you would have failed, because that's not how it works. You need to know why you eat what you eat, how that food affects you, and what combinations work for you as well, and how often. There's lots of questions that typically aren't considered when somebody's looking at a weight loss diet. So, one of the first things I said was you need to know why you're eating what you're eating. There is no diet out there that looks at that. And yet, if you can't fix your why, if you can't fix the emotional connection to these things, they're not going away. You can be using willpower, you can have diet after diet, you can even have bariatric surgery. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to go straight back to those foods because you don't know why you shouldn't, right? And you don't have the tools to make that decision because you don't know what it's going to do to you. I have two friends that had bariatric surgery, and at the same time, more or less, one of them went straight back to eating how she'd eaten before, even with that tiny space, and she put the weight back on and a bit and has stayed that way ever since. The other one sought out a nutritionist and got some advice, and she did make it work. But that's, it's very hit and miss, don't you think, to have a major surgery? Unless you're discovering why you eat the foods you eat, or what you would like to do differently, and it's your choice, right? Nobody's going to make you do anything, but it's your choice to find a different food instead of that one that harms you. That's so much more powerful, and you're in control, right? I don't want to be in control of telling you what to eat. That's not going to help anybody for any length of time. Those meal preparation services that like deliver it to your door, that's, particularly the ones that are pre-prepared. Wow, you've probably got chemical city going on in there, and you didn't learn anything about why they gave you what they gave you or how it works for you. There's more after the break, so don't go away. You're listening to me, Michaela Gaffen Stone, here on the Inspired Choices Network, and we are navigating some very complicated relationships. See you in a minute.
What if your relationships could be a source of delight instead of a source of struggle? In a world where human interactions are anything but straightforward, tuning in to Navigating Complicated Relationships with behavior expert Michaela Gaffen Stone will offer you insights, tools, and a whole new level of understanding for you to use right now. Listen for Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to mickey@gaffenstone.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm so glad you're still here. I hope you have something to take notes with, because I'm going to give you a little exercise to do in a minute or two. I'll give you time to get your notepads and stuff together while we consider the psychology of food cravings, right? That sounds kind of heavy, but really it basically means, what are you thinking when you eat that food? What was the trigger? It could be your emotions. It could be in the environment. You just had some stressful meeting, or you were brilliant in an exam, or, any range of emotions from an event can trigger. And by understanding where your triggers are, we start to find the path to what basically that emotional eating thing is all about. I had a conversation with one of my clients the other day who said she was really looking for a way to have chocolate without having chocolate. I thought that was interesting. So we investigated that a little bit, and I asked her to just talk. Tell me, what does chocolate mean to you? Why is it a big deal? And what does it do for you? And we finally came up with, she had grown up in the communist era in one of the European countries that were affected by that. And chocolate was a rarity. They couldn't get it. And so if somebody brought it into the country, it was a big deal, and the kids would go and steal it from their parents and all kinds of things. And she even said to me, the way in the US people trade baseball cards? I don't know if they still do, but anyway, I said yes. And she said, well, in our country, we would trade candy wrappers. That's how important they were. So her pull to eating chocolate came from that place. And she said, I feel deprived if I can't eat chocolate. It's something that she had learned as a kid was really valuable, really crucial, and everybody else had it except her. So now she's in a very different situation, but she feels this pull that I have to have chocolate so that I don't feel deprived. So we're still working through some alternatives for that, so that she can manage the chocolate and rather than having it manage her. Because if you can choose it or you can leave it, that is true food freedom, right? That's when you're in charge, not the food. So the little exercise that I want to give you, I'll give that to you now. So make some notes and come back to the podcast and catch anything that you miss, any steps that you miss. It's not complicated, but try this at your next meal or your next snack. So think about the food that you're going to eat. Pick one thing, right? And then write down, I'm going to do a lot of journaling here, but write down, what do you think about that food? How does it make you feel thinking about that food? What comes up for you? Are you just like starving, hungry, and I want to eat this thing? Or are you looking forward to it because it's been a long day and this is your reward? Like, what story comes up about that food? And how do you think it's going to taste? And, how are you going to feel afterwards? Write all that down. That's your first step. Then you're going to eat the food. After one bite, how did that taste? Was it as good as you thought it was going to be? Are you really looking forward to the second bite? What comes up for you then? Do you feel an urge to shovel it all in as fast as you can? Or are you taking your time with it? This is all really interesting to note. You do the same thing for the second bite, third, fourth, fifth, however many it takes. And if you discover, oh, I ate the rest of it and I didn't even think about it, cool, write that down too. All of this is journaling to get some information about your relationship with that food that you're eating, how you relate to it. And then after you've eaten it, was it as good as you thought it was going to be? Was it as tasty? What was different about it from your expectations? Because chances are there is something. It could be the texture. It could be that it was sweeter than you thought. It could be that it just tasted crumbly or something. Like, what is it? What comes up for you? Write that down. And then I'd like you to set a timer or put a sticky note or whatever you need to do so that you can check in with yourself an hour later to see how you feel now. And 2 hours later, if you're really into this little exercise, and see how you feel. Did it help? Do you feel better? Like, did it fill you up? Was the experience, what we're looking for is, was the experience what you expected it to be? Because that is key. We often think that we're going to eat something because it tastes so amazing, and then you start on it and it's like, actually, ew, it's not so good, right? Ask anybody that's ever chomped down a whole load of Halloween candy. I mean, is that stuff actually tasty? No, it tastes like wax. It's not good quality food. It's not good quality. It's not even chocolate, actually, let alone good quality. So, if you've ever had a binge on Halloween candy because it's there and because you can, and there's an excuse and nobody's going to tell you you're being greedy or whatever you're afraid they're going to tell you, you'll know that really doesn't feel great. You might have even gotten a headache from it. And the taste, that was not what you were looking for, chances are. If it was, okay, write that down. It's fine. There's no judgment here. It's all about learning. And that's a great little exercise for you to figure out. If you pick a food that you think you might have an emotional connection to, that can be a good one to start with. And if you feel a lot of resistance coming up, I don't want to do this stupid exercise. Like, why would I want to do this? I don't care. I'm just going to eat the thing. That too is interesting, my friends. Like, why? Why do you not want to do this? Are you concerned you'll learn something? Or is it just that it's a lot of work? If it's a lot of work, just imagine what trying to regain your health is when you've lost your health because you didn't do the work. See what I'm saying? So it's all a case of, where are your priorities? And do you want to know what your emotional connections are? Nothing bad is going to happen to you by discovering those. You get more empowered. That's basically what happens. So let's look at another aspect, which is habit formation, because people tend to think, I'm going to do this new habit and it will make all the difference. I'm going to exercise every day, first thing in the morning for an hour, for example. Pick another one. I'm not going to have chocolate ever again, or I'm not going to have coffee ever again. And they just launch into this new thing, expecting it to become a habit. And it's extremely difficult for that to occur, because typically speaking, when people start new habits or try to, they don't anchor it to anything. And this is really important. If you want to have a new habit, like, I'm going to give you a suggestion right now. Your new habit, starting today, not tomorrow, today, is drink more water. If you typically don't drink that much, at least double your intake. And I mean water. I don't mean any of the soft drinks. I don't mean any of the doctored drinks or diet sodas or any of those things. I mean water, yes. That stuff that comes out of the tap or the bottle or wherever you're going to get it from. Double that. That will be a help for you. Now, how are you going to remember to drink more water? Because people often don't, right? They have a good intention, but it's not anchored to anything. So here's a suggestion. If you also drink coffee, put a pitcher of water next to the coffee machine if you make it at home. And when you go to get your coffee, you can also grab the pitcher of water and take it with you to your desk or wherever you're going to be sitting. And there you have the water looking at you. It's a lot easier to build that habit if you anchor it to something you already do. And it needs to make sense, right? Like if I said, well, grab a pitcher of water and put it next to the treadmill. Okay, but you might be avoiding the treadmill. So, that might not work, right? But typically, many people will start with tea or coffee in the morning. So put your water there, or the empty pitcher to remind you to fill it. The bottle that you're going to use, whatever you have, put it right next to the coffee machine, and that will be a reminder. That will give you more chance of success in that particular habit than trying to do the willpower thing. And I have to tell you, willpower is this teeny tiny muscle that's there to give you this push, but it's not there to carry you all the way through doing something new. And if you try to use willpower, it's a case of you're forcing yourself. You're gritting your teeth and making this thing happen because reasons. And I can tell you that is so short-lived, it's sad. But it can't work because you haven't anchored it to anything. So that's something that's important to consider with any new habit you want to do. If it's going to bed earlier, if it's getting some exercise, walking the dog one more time, like pick a thing, anchor it to something you already do, right? So that's my suggestion for habits. Now, healthy eating, what else does it mean? Well, it means not having ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed is stuff that really isn't food anymore. It has a long shelf life. It can just sit there because it's full of chemicals and it doesn't have anything natural in it anymore. It has been denatured. And as I said earlier in this episode, your body doesn't know what to do with that. The poor thing is just storing it wherever it can. And do you know where it tends to store these things? In the fat layer. So the fat layer becomes more and more anchored into you, if you will, and harder to release when it's loaded up with all kinds of stuff that you've been eating that the body can't metabolize, it can't use, and it can't build you from it. One of the biggest reasons we have a rising number of people with obesity is that they are overfed but undernourished. And that is so important. If you keep eating fast food, for example, then you're getting all the calories, sure. But the body says, yeah, okay, I have these calories, but I need nutrition. Can you eat more? Can you eat more? And so the body's going to keep sending you hunger signals. So someone that has that kind of diet, ultra-processed, fast food stuff, typically they are going to be bigger because they're having to do battle with these basically toxins that they're eating, and they're not getting the nutrients. So the body keeps saying, eat more. It's not gluttony. It's not laziness. It's not any of those things. It is your body trying to survive. The problem here is what the food industry are selling you. They're marketing this stuff to you in a way that, hey, it's healthy. Hey, you get these bigger portions. This is a good thing. Everybody's happy when they eat this. Are they though? Really? I'm going to leave you to think about that while we have yet another break. I will see you in a minute here on the Inspired Choices Network, and you are listening to Navigating Complicated Relationships. See you in a minute.
What if your relationships could be a source of delight instead of a source of struggle? In a world where human interactions are anything but straightforward, tuning in to Navigating Complicated Relationships with behavior expert Michaela Gaffen Stone will offer you insights, tools, and a whole new level of understanding for you to use right now. Listen for Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to mickey@gaffenstone.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I love getting emails, so please do email me. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know what you think of what I'm telling you about nutrition, what it is, what it isn't, and who to go to, which obviously I'm going to say me, right? Because I have this amazing coaching system and it's working for people. I can give you all kinds of testimonials about that. But ask questions and really consider your priorities. Like, who told you that you weren't worth spending money on good food? Because, you know, we spend it on the latest pair of sneakers. We spend it on a fancy coat or something. And yet the food that we eat isn't necessarily the best that we can get. And the thing is, the food industry will change what it's selling based on how people shop. So you can make a difference by how you shop and what kind of food you buy. And if you buy something that grew out of the ground, or something that ate stuff that grew out of the ground, or swam in the ocean and not stuck in a little farming place, then you're helping yourself and you're telling a message to the food industry, right? So I just want to let you know about next week's show while I've got your ear. Next week's show is all about overcoming stress. And you might be feeling a little stressed by now as you're listening to all this stuff about food and what's good to eat, what isn't good to eat. So even if you're someone who reads labels and you read the ingredient list, ideally, because the label telling you how many carbs there is and so on isn't really worth much. Did you know that the food industry, with those labels, they can err on the side of plus or minus 20%? And you can be pretty sure that they're going to give you a lower number. So if something says it's 100 calories, you can add 20% onto that. And that'll be closer to the truth, right? Same for carbs, same for sugar. But wait a minute. Sugar has another thing going on. There are 257 names of sugar now. There could even be more, right? This is last year's information. There could be more by now. Why are they doing that? Because on the nutrition label, where you've got the ingredients, right? The ingredient label, that's the part I want you to look at. They're in order of quantity. So the thing that there's most of is the first thing. The thing the second most of is the second thing, so on and so on. So if you have sugar in 8 different ways in that product, they go way down on that list. And so it doesn't look like there's much sugar in there at all. It's really well hidden. And that's one of the ways it's hidden, is by using all these different names. Now, another thing that's being changed at the moment is aspartame, which is a very popular sweetener, artificial sweetener. It has a list of something like 96 side effects, none of which are good. And the item is getting such a reputation, and deservedly so, that the companies who produce it are starting to call it different things. So there will be different names for aspartame all over the place, and you won't know that you're having that. This is something that they can legally do. So you have to be so aware of what you're eating if you buy something that has added ingredients, right? If it's not the whole food. Now, someone said to me the other day, well, whole food takes a long time to make, to put into the form of a meal. Yeah, it does. And that's how we used to eat. But there's ways to shorten that time for yourself. You can cook all the proteins that you're going to have that week ahead of time, and they'll store well. Or you can get your vegetables chopped up and put into containers. So all you do is, throw them into cooking or eat them as they are. There's all sorts of ways where you can bulk prepare and minimize what you have to do each day. So it's just a question, do you have the space, and can you get those items in the first place? If you can't, how close can you get to that? But that the whole thing with the convenience foods is they have a very long shelf life because there's nothing natural in them, nothing good for you. If it says fortified, those are food items where the natural vitamins and minerals have been taken out because they'll cause the food to go rancid. And chemical facsimiles have been put in there. Your body does not know what those things are. It can't use them. It's not what's called bioavailable. It's not going to help you. Your levels are still going to be low in those things because you're not actually consuming them. So all of this can be messed with on that label. And even a savvy person who's reading all the labels is going to have a hard time navigating that. So I do recommend that you read them anyway, because some things are just so obvious and egregious. But if you can buy something that has 4 ingredients or less, it's going to be healthier for you than something that's been processed to within an inch of anybody's life. So those are some tips for that. Drink lots of water, because a lot of times we mistake thirst for hunger. We think we need to eat something, and we don't actually. That's not the problem at all. You need to drink something, and that will help you a lot. So refer back to the habit I mentioned earlier and how you can hook that to something you already do. And see how you feel. Make some notes about that. I'm really into journaling, you might have noticed. But if you make some notes now about how you feel now, and then start to consciously increase your water intake, make some notes about that. How do you feel? And another suggestion is, don't chug the water down like it's a beer keg or something. Don't chug it, because that's just going to go through your body. It can't be utilized properly. If you are going to the bathroom way more than you would like, and you blame the amount of water you're drinking, then I'm going to suggest you take a little bit of Himalayan salt, and I'm very specific about this, not the white garbage that they put all kinds of chemicals in, but a little bit of pink Himalayan salt. Drop that in the bottom of your water. You won't taste it, but it will help you to retain enough of that water to get the benefit from it. You're not going to swell up like a balloon either, okay? So all of those things, I've given you some tips today, and I would love to know if you try them, and if you do, how does it work for you? And if you'd like more, I'm going to be running another program, 90-day program in May, and I'm taking a small group of people through who are going to be fully supported and access to me every day, coaching calls every week. Like, we will really be there supporting you, supporting each other, and getting through some really interesting learning and giving you some food freedom. Wouldn't food freedom be great? Where you have the choice over what you're eating rather than the food telling you what to do? Because that's what happens if you have emotional eating. Pretty key, right? So if you're interested, contact me through social media on Facebook, send me a message. You can send me an email if you prefer. I don't mind. I'll find both of them. And let's have a conversation about what that could look like for you. 90 days could change your health. It could change your life. And I'm not kidding. I have people that will attest to this. So this is something I'd love for you to consider. You don't have to have weight to lose. You just have health that you would like to improve, and a relationship with food that you would like to improve. One of my clients does Muay Thai, judo, and rock climbing, and does not need or wish to lose any weight, but wants to optimize his nutrition. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're working on. It's not all about the weight. It is all about food freedom and all about your health, your well-being, and your longevity. And I'm all about energy levels. Like, you really want to have more energy in your day, right? So that you can do the things you want to do. Think about it. Contact me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Meanwhile, I will see you next week, all about overcoming stress. Have a great week between now and then. See you soon. And I should mention, Michaela Gaffen Stone. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Navigating Complicated Relationships show. Michaela returns Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, remember every relationship is a journey, and with the right tools, you can create stronger, more fulfilling connections.